Welcome to the Tip Channel. That is perfection.
Hello, and welcome back to That is Perfection. Today, I'd like to give you a few tips in regards to setting up a small cabinet shop. I've been in the industry now for about 40 years, and naturally, every time I buy a new piece of equipment, it just becomes easier and easier. So I thought I'd step through some of the pieces of equipment that I have, the advantages to them, and how to set up a small shop and still have a decent amount of equipment. So let's get started. Naturally, your very first thing that you want to do is to get set up with a vendor. And you want a vendor that's, going to be within like 50 miles or what have you, and one that will deliver to you. Naturally, you don't want to be spending half a day running after materials. You don't have to have a forklift. If you're buying 10, 12 sheets of material at a time, the driver most of the time is willing to help you unload. I do have a forklift for unloading, but you don't have to have one. Now, from my forklift, I come in and I put my product on. This is called a Presto lift. I'm not sure the actual name of it, but it's electric over hydraulics. It's just a push around lift, and the neat thing about it is it can be adjusted at different heights. Now, the advantage to this is that whenever you have material in the rack and you want to get things out, it's very easy to wheel this over, pull things out onto this. You don't need 2 or 3 people in the shop. I can actually prepare an entire kitchen by myself working with what we have here. Now, so from the forklift, I come in and I put it on the Presto, and then I'm actually ready to cut. Now, I'll wheel this right over to my saw. And again, the advantage to this is I can actually take an entire sheet of material and pull it right over onto my saw. So again, one person, you're able to maneuver it. You pull it right back over. So one of the first pieces of equipment that I want to talk about is the saw. Now, can you start out with a normal table saw and radial arm saw and build cabinets? Yes, you can. It won't be as precise. It's going to be a little clumsy in regards to handling material. This is called a slider, and I'll explain some of the advantages to using this. But if you want to start out with a table saw, you can. Basically, what you want to look at is placement. Now, if you're only going to be dealing with 8-foot material, you want to be about 9 feet from any wall so you can comfortably get it on the saw and take it through the saw. Myself, occasionally I'm building countertops and I'm using 12-foot Boise board to make it out of so that I have less seams in the board. So I have my saw placed about 13 feet away from this garage door. But anyways, if you're using a normal table saw, it will be pretty much a 2-man operation because you'll need somebody to hold the one end of the product while you're pushing it up against the fence and going through the table saw. The advantage to the slider is a lot in regards to the industry. Now, this one has what's referred to as a scoring blade. I don't have that blade set up in here right now, but whenever you're cutting products like melamines and what have you, what will happen is you'll get a little bit of blowout on the bottom of the product. So what a scoring blade does, it sets up about 1/8 of an inch high, and it scores the material first so that it doesn't blow out on the bottom of the material. A little complicated to try to explain, but that's what a scorer is. Now, the advantage of the slider, as I already said, I can pull product right over onto the slider, and I can slide this right through the saw. Now, fortunately, I purchased an old saw that was a huge saw, but it had these outriggers. So this has rollers on, which makes it very nice because I can slide things right through it. You don't have to have that. You can make a rolling table, put a piece of laminate on top of it so it's nice and smooth. Lockable casters is nice so that the table doesn't start to move on you. You can set up a table in back of your saw and in front of your saw so that you can actually support the material without a second person. But with the slider, again, you can throw the entire sheet up on top of here. Cross cuts are actually very easy. This has a fence. This moves right over, locks into place, naturally has the measurements on. Flip that right down, and there you are for doing cross cuts. For rips, naturally, you have a fence. Now, my fence, I have what is referred to as a tiger stop. I'm going to zoom in and show you what the tiger stop is. All right, what is a tiger stop? A tiger stop is basically a movable fence ran by a computer. It's about the only way I could really try to explain it. So let's just say, for instance, I want 23 1/8. I can enter in 23.125, start. Automatically, it is moving that fence to this position. So what this does, two things. Number one is it keeps it very accurate. It's good to within probably a 32nd of an inch. So this is one of the key things in building cabinets, is to make sure that your cuts are as precise as possible. Another big advantage to the slider is that if you're actually planning on building things out of real wood, you're going to go to a place that kiln dries lumber and purchase your lumber. You're not going to go to a sawmill, but you got to go to a place that dries the lumber. You want to be, about 5 to 7% moisture content in order to build things. Anyways, the advantage of the slider in regards to rough cut lumber is when you buy rough cut lumber, it's going to be rough on both sides, so you're going to run it through the planer, but also the edge of it is not going to be straight. So they make machines that are referred to as straight liners, which will actually take the board and push it through and cut it straight. But naturally, that's another piece of equipment, another footprint in your shop. With a slider, all you simply do is you take your board and you place it on the saw. I go about 3/8 of an inch past the blade. I clamp it to the front. I then come back and clamp it to the back. Now, this is a 10-foot slider, so it's very easy for me to straight line 10-foot stuff, and I just simply push it right through the saw. I've got a nice straight edge to get started with. The next piece of equipment that I have in my shop, this is just a normal table saw, 5 horsepower. Now, I have this set up so that I can make this groove in the back of the cabinet. So that's a 1/4 inch groove, 1/4 inch deep. It's got what is referred to as a 1/2 inch standing shoulder left. Now, in my saw, I've got a set of dado blades set up for the 1/4 inch width. Got my fence set at a 1/2 inch off the dado blades, and I'm actually running the saw backwards. I know that sounds weird. You cannot do that without a feeder, but the feeder allows me to run the saw backwards, so you get a lot less chipping running something through a saw blade backwards. But if you do that without a feeder, it's going to grab that board and shoot it across the room, so you don't want to do that. But you see what I'm also doing is that I'm utilizing the footprint of the shop. What I'm talking about is this is my table for my saw. And you can see I have this set about 54 inches off the blade, which is as far as my fence will go off of the blade. So it's not interfering with me using my slider, but I'm able to slide product through and use the outrigger tables to catch product. My next piece of equipment is an edge bander. Now, edge banders are available in a couple different ways, and what I'm talking about is you can get one that is a much smaller footprint and it does not apply glue to the edge band. What it does is heat the edge band up, and you buy the edge band that's already pre-glued. In my case, my edge bander applies glue to the edge of my board and then applies the edge band. Now, what is an edge band? An edge band, basically, you can see this is a piece of wood veneer. This happens to be in maple. This will take and put this right on the edge of a plywood shelf, router, trim it, all one shot. Well, if you're making your drawer boxes out of plywood, again, you need to finish the top edge of those drawer boxes. So again, would be the veneer edge band. If you're using melamine, naturally they have the melamine available as well. But this is a big time saver because you'll end up with hundreds of parts doing a job, and you can simply run them right through, routers it, trims it, all one shot. Comes out the other end of the machine, got to hit it a little bit with a file, clean up the excess glue, and that product's done. Now my last big piece of equipment is a countertop saw. Now this is for doing rolled edge countertops. So you buy these slabs, you bring them in, and this will cut all the miters and what have you on them. You don't have to have a countertop saw. You can buy your countertops from the lumber yard. But anyways, this is my last piece of equipment that is very big and is stationary. So the next thing that we're going to look at, and one of the most important things in regards to a small shop, is one word: casters, casters, casters. Because you cannot afford the footprint to keep taking up space by having equipment set up permanently. So I'll show you what I mean by the casters. All right, now here's what I'm referring to as far as casters. This is a big 18-inch planer, very, very heavy, but yes, it is on casters. I can wheel it right over, I can plug it in, I can hook up my dust collection, and it's only taking up this small a footprint whenever I'm not using it. 24-inch belt sander, same thing, big piece of equipment. I wheel it right over, hook it up, and I'm ready to sand product. The next ones that you see are shapers. Now, this is a very old shaper. Little top heavy. It's the only one that I don't move because I'm scared of it toppling over. All the rest of the shapers are on casters. I bring them out, I make my moldings and what have you, and then shove them back into the wall. What's a shaper? A shaper makes nice moldings. You put the shaper bits in and you can make, say for instance, a nice piece of under cabinet molding like this one. So very, very handy in the shop, and you can do a lot of detail work without spending a lot of money on purchasing moldings. The next thing that I want to talk about is finishing product. And I do keep a little area in the shop for a mixing station, try to keep it just as clean as possible. I do not have a flame-proof cabinet for my chemicals. I wish I did. But one thing that I do want to point out to you, the most important thing is that your stain rags and what have you, you want to put them in an airtight container. And what I'm talking about is something like this that air doesn't get into. Put your stain rags in that. Even if you got an empty 5-gallon bucket that has a lid, use it. But stain rags will start a fire. So when you're done with your stain rags, things that will have all, say for instance, mineral spirits, paint thinner, things like that in, those things will self-combust. So in a can or outside or in the burn pile, one of the three. So that's one of the most important things about finishing. Now, actual finishing, you can watch my video, Finishing with ML Campbell, and I'll step through sanding and staining and finishing. But this is all about setting up a cabinet shop. Next up is the spray booth. Now this is where your project comes alive. Now you can start out with a window and a box fan. That will work. I was fortunate enough to come across this spray booth that was being used by a furniture company going out of business. Now this spray booth is only 8 foot deep and it's 10 foot wide. So how do I get an entire kitchen through the spray booth? Very easy. I have 6 rolling tables in my shop. They're about 3 foot high. I put product on there, I wheel one in, I spray it, I wheel it out, bring another one in, spray it, so forth and so on. So I can do up to 6 3 foot by 6 foot tables at one time going through my spray booth. Also, very, very important, you've got to have ventilation. You've got to get those fumes away from you. And I can't strive this enough. I see people spraying without a respirator. Use a respirator. Some of the other pieces of equipment in my shop, SR9 by a CMI overarm router. Very heavy piece of equipment. Is it on casters? No, but I do have it on a pallet. I can bring a pallet jack right over and move it out if I need to. Bandsaw, same thing, it's on casters. My hinge drilling machine, it's on casters. My drill press, it's on casters. The few small pieces up here I barely use, they are not on casters. Even my inline boring machine is on casters. If I have a large panel to do, I pull it out and I'll be able to even run the large panel on that. So Craig boring machine on casters. Each piece that I need, I bring out and I use. Now, the one thing that we did not talk about, well, two things. Number one is dust collection. Now, if you noticed in some of my videos, I've got dust collection running through the entire shop and naturally takes care of that. You don't have to have that. I started out with a portable. You wheel it right over to the piece of equipment and you hook it up. You push that piece of equipment back against the wall, bring out the next piece, hook up the dust collection. The only advantage of having ducts all the way through your shop is you don't have to deal with that. The other thing is location, and what I'm talking about is that my ceiling in my shop is a 12 foot. I have worked in an 8-foot environment. It is a nightmare when you go to try to spin panels and what have you around. So height's very important, lighting's very important. You got to see what you're doing. Heat and air conditioning, in my mind, essential. If you're going to be spending a lot of time in your shop, you've got to be able to control the temperature. Very last thing is humidity. Now, my shop, half of it's underground, half of it isn't. Big advantage to that is that I get a lot of heat and coolness from the earth itself. But the disadvantage to that is relative humidity. So I will have several dehumidifiers at certain times through the year running in my shop to keep that humidity level down, especially when you're spraying and what have you. With that humidity level high, you're never going to get a good product in regards to drying in a timely manner, if you will. So a lot of important things. I hope that you found this informative. It helps in setting up a small shop. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below and I'll get to them as soon as possible. Anyways, if you found this informative, please like and subscribe and have a great day.